It's Primus Tracks with Josh, Frankie, and Soya.
What a couple of dumb shits.
Hello, Primates! You found Primus Tracks. Congratulations. We are at Primus Tracks on Instagram and Twitter. I am Josh. The second wheel of this godforsaken tricycle is Frankie.
Hey, Josh. Hey, Tim.
Hey, what's up? Whoa.
That's right. Tim Sawyer rounds things out. He's in the front. He's got the steering column on. So, Sawyer, thanks for being here and giving us direction.
It's always a pleasure to meet up with you guys, man. This is so fun.
Oh, yeah. And riding on the back of the tricycle, digging into my shoulders, I'm going to have to give him a reprimand. It's Luke Bemand.
Hey, Luke.
Beautiful. What's up, Josh, Frankie, Soya? It's great
Thank
to be
you.
back, boys. Thanks for having me back.
Luke, I'm really sorry I missed that episode where you guys were all on.
It was epic.
Soya, it was epic. We missed it, too,
I listened to it. It was great, man. I loved it how you were mentioning me now and again, you and the boys. We're glad Soya's not here to talk shit about how terrible we are.
You would have been calling us out on our bullshit, Soya, so it might have helped
dude,
us.
it's all good.
Being
man.
a ref there, man. We need it sometimes. Yeah.
It's great to have new friends, man. And I love hanging with you cats, all three of you guys, man. And I'm honored to be here with these guys and you guys, you know.
Thank you,
Feelings
Sawyer.
mutual, bud.
Luke, lespecial's hitting the road. Where are you guys going to be going real soon here?
Yes, sir. We are resuming tour in June. We've got a bunch of dates. We're going to be in Philly at the Ardmore Music Hall, just outside of Philadelphia. We're going to be in Brooklyn at the Sultan Room. Both shows there have sold out. Stowe, Vermont, those are sold out. And then 5 shows in Colorado. We'll be at the Mishawaka Amphitheater, Beanstalk Music Festival, playing Frizzle Fry, and 2 nights in Denver. So, yeah, getting back on the road. We can't wait.
Yeah, that's great that you guys are getting out and gigging, and they're at Lespecial Music on, I think, all the socials, correct?
Yes, sir. Twitter, Insta, at lespecial music. You can just type in lespecial in YouTube or Facebook and find us there, too.
When you said Mishawaka Amphitheater, it rang a bell. I didn't know that venue even existed until Claypool and Delirium play there. And it looks freaking amazing. I mean, it's completely outdoors. There's a river behind it.
Yeah.
There's no Wi-Fi, so people are completely into the music. It looks absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it is a beautiful place. I didn't know that Claypool, Lennon, Delirium played there. That's amazing.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, it has some comparisons to Red Rocks. Obviously, it's not quite on that epic scale, but it is beautiful, right in front of a river. You can camp out there. You can go hiking. It just has that Colorado vibe that you're playing in some magical ranch.
And Frankie, how many times did Bowie play there?
0.
Yeah, damn. Well, I tried.
Thank you, Josh.
I'm sure there's another connection that we can find later.
I got one for the end. Sure.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Sneak it in, right under the bell there. Well, we have some unfinished business from last week when we discussed fisticuffs. So I had to go, so I did not play the cover tune, as I promised I would try to find a cover tune for every Brown album track. We do have a band called No Braino who covered fisticuffs in an interesting way, and it looks like these guys are Italian, and this was recorded in 2012, so I'll play a snippet. Guitar, bass, drums, and trumpet or cornet, I can't tell which. So let's have a listen to a portion of this. So essentially they use this as an instrumental showcase, so each guy gets a solo throughout it. It's about 6 minutes.
Sounded pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Josh, where do you find this demonic circus music? You have some vaudevillian streaming service that you're not telling us about?
I just have the right search terms, right time in the dead of night, and that's when these things pop up.
It's got you were playing a couple other, it must have been on the Cover Blues or maybe another episode. It just has this crazy Danny Elfman dark carnival sound to it. But Primus's music lends itself really well to that horn sound, especially when they slow it down like that. It's even more sinister sounding almost.
For sure, yeah, and you can really lean into that. These guys certainly do. It's kind of cool. It's in a little club. It just looks like some guys jamming out. It's kind of a cool little video. So
Italy, you said?
Right.
God, I love Italy. Oh my God. anywhere in Italy. Jesus Christ. Great country. Get there, guys. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess we're here to talk about Golden Boy as opposed to our travel plans. We can do that off air, of course. But we're talking about track 3 from the Brown album, Golden Boy. And I guess I want to open with this. Why was this not the single?
That's a good point.
I have thrown my hands in the air about that for 20 years.
Certainly one of the catchiest numbers on the album.
Short, sweet, to the point. It's got a lot of great stuff going for it. But maybe we can explore that as we go through. Maybe that'll be the theme where I second guess Les Claypool's decision-making from 25 years ago.
That's trippy because that's always a thing that I thought about as records get made and you make a record is what's the single or what is a potential single, and what's potential just not a single. It's just the band doing their stuff.
Well, Shake Hands with Beef was the lead single off the Brown album, right?
Yes.
And I remember Brain saying, and the episode you guys had with Brain was fantastic, by the way. He is such a trip to listen to, man. Yeah. He's so energetic and he talks like he plays. He was talking about that and he was saying, he kind of wished that they had more material like Beef on the album and that really minimal groove driven sound. It's interesting. Golden Boy is different in the sense that it's a very busy track. It doesn't have that space that Shake Hands with Beef has. But I agree. I mean, to me, Golden Boy and Beef are definitely two of the standout tracks, and this would have been a great single. So yeah, that's a good question.
For me personally, I feel like this song ABs and ABs and ABs, and it's whatever, solo AB out, bap, bap, bap. Lure goes up 1 octave at the end. Mm-hmm. And Brain doesn't really do much in this, I mean, he just kind of plays because when Brain talked about making this record, he came in there with minimal jamming to figure it out, and he wished that the band had done a tour, or not a tour, but at least some shows and some runs to like work these jams out live or in the live setting at soundcheck to figure it out,
Yeah.
And to me, Brain's talent doesn't shine on the Brown album as much as I know that it can, like he's really holding back on a lot of this,
To me, that gives the Brown album that vibe and that edge too, that kind of looseness and openness and space that it has. So it was interesting to hear him say that he wished that Primus had toured before recording it. And I can see from a musician's perspective how you feel like that, but I feel like it wouldn't have that same energy that we all love about the Brown album.
Of course, dude. That the Brown album is what it is. It's what we made, and what those guys said, here we go. I mean, if you had listened to the last episode, I forgot to mention when I talked to Brain, we did have jamming going on before this record was made. There was some jamming. There was some, come on, Brain, in rehearsals. What do you got? And like, let's go. How about this? It actually there was a little bit of something, but a lot of it was freeform once we got up to Rancho,
Yeah,
this song to me, I really like it. I love that bass groove. I mean, I loved it in that moment. I was like, okay, this is cool. And Les structured it so chorus, verse, chorus, solo, blah, blah, blah. But that's it. There's not that magic to it like Jerry was a race car driver or something, So
it's definitely driven by the bass groove. There's some songs where Brain is the commander on this album, right? Like Cottingtown or just the beat-driven tracks. But this one, I as a bass player, but I think a lot of people think about the bass groove in terms of Golden Boy.
That bass line is amazing, and Lure just plays right along with it.
Exactly. It's that unison groove. The bass line's so good that Lure just beefs it up by playing in unison with him.
I love it when he goes to the octave up at the end. I wish he would have done that type of thing a little bit more through the song.
Yeah, and Brain goes to the ride there. It does give it that nice lift in the outro, yeah.
We should definitely get to live history, but I think there is something to that structure, Soya, that lends itself to being a single because it's not overworked. A-B, solo, you're done. And that's kind of, you get your chorus.
You have to know that Les doesn't have like, Steve Lillywhite or somebody standing there like some heavy duty producer going, I love what you're doing. And now I have a vision of how we're going to make this a bazillion selling single, where Les was like, fuck it, this is the song. And that's the MO of Primus. It's like, it's not about somebody coming in and making Primus better. Primus is Primus,
Yep.
And even though we all agreed this is a really catchy song and could be a single, it really isn't a single, I mean, that as a whole, as what was recorded and what was released, it's another thing on the Brown album,
We'll definitely get into it. And I suppose we should do live history so that we can start wrapping ourselves around when they played it and how often.
It's interesting. As you know, in the early days, Primus had this tradition of premiering new songs on New Year's Eve. So Golden Boy is not the exception. They performed it for the first time on New Year's Eve 1996, the first show with Brain in Primus. If we compare it to the album version, I mean, this live premiere is 2 minutes, 30 seconds long. So that tells you it's pretty up-tempo. It's considerably faster than the album version.
Or it's underdeveloped at that point.
The structure is there. The lyrics are there. They were just playing it really fast. Then they played the song for the first time as we know it in the album in 1997 during the European leg of the tour. So they performed this for the first time in Germany. During the Brown album tour and then in 1998, I mean, of course, this song was not as rare as Fisticuffs, but it was not a certainty in the set list either. I mean, it's very scattered. There are not that many performances. And then, as you know, it vanished completely until the return of Primus in 2010. Now, this is where things get interesting. You can tell by the number of performances throughout 2010, 2011, and 2012 that Jay Lane really enjoyed playing this song. I mean, there are a ton of performances of Golden Boy from 2010 onwards. Mm-hmm. And then from 2013 up to 2019, Golden Boy has only been played 22 times. I mean, it was only played once in 2018. It was only played like 7 times in 2017 and only twice in 2019. So that definitely tells you something about Curve's feelings about this song, I think.
Or at least how it sounds when Tim and Les are playing it together as opposed to Jay and Les, I would think.
Yeah, I brought forward some live cuts so you guys can hear all 3 drummers approaching this song.
Sweet. Well, let's get into the music here. Luke, you've got that nice-looking bass there, so let's start with that. And what do we got going on in this tune, since it is a bass-driven tune?
For sure, yeah. You know, like I was saying, you know, it's a pretty busy bass line. It's a pretty busy, active slap and pop, a lot of strumming, a lot of 16th notes. It's a very interesting bass line. It's kind of built around these dominant 7th chords. So a dominant 7th chord is your root, a major 3rd, and a dominant 7 or a minor 7th. They're kind of more common in like funk or jazz. You'll hear it a lot. It doesn't have as discernible major or minor quality. An easy example for Primus fans to reference would be Groundhog's Day.
Oh, sure.
There's a nice fat C7 for you. So that's a 7th chord. So that intro is just all these 7th chords, starting on F sharp. So it's this. And that's your intro. So it's a 7th chord from F sharp, down a whole step, up a half step, back. Yeah. It's something that's weird, but Primus makes groove really hard. And so that takes us into the head, the main groove, which is a B7 groove. So I'll kind of just play both of those for you guys back to back so you can hear how one goes into the other. Sure. Because it's pretty weird. This song, it's got, you know, like, so I said, the form is pretty A-B-A-B, but it's like your intro is starting on an F sharp, your main groove is a B, and then your verse is an A. So it's like this. It's like these weird 7th chords all over the place, but that's Primus harmony. It works. It grooves. So here's the intro into the main groove.
Dang, man.
Good Lord, that was good, dude.
Am I right in assuming that it's a pretty hard song to play, Luke?
Definitely. It's tricky. It's very
I don't
busy.
see any beads of sweat coming off of Luke's forehead right there.
Well, I didn't play it perfectly, so I'm sure the purists out there will hear that there was a couple little fumbles. I'm not making excuses. I did just have my bass set up and get new strings from Joe from MBJ Guitars, but that brightness kind of lends itself to this song, too. But yeah, it's tricky. It's a lot of just back and forth 16ths, and this. It's a lot of back and forth, and it's like if you lose the tempo or maybe you put a pop mute where it's not supposed to be, it will offset the groove. So yeah, it was a groove I used to play a lot as a kid, and like anything with Primus incorrectly. And last night I was just sitting here jamming, and I was like, this is a tricky bass groove. It's not easy. And I think because it's like so busy in that main groove section, Les keeps it really minimal for the verse. And he's just doing this A 7th chord down a whole step back. Just this.
Yeah.
It's simple. And I think it kind of needs to breathe there with how busy the main groove is. But yeah, it's busy.
I think what I really appreciate about that line is that it's got that it's got that thumping and plucking, but you just get a little bit of a walking line in there. Do do do. I love that. Just that little walk, and those are hammer-ons, right?
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of hammer-on. It really flexes on this B dominant chord. That's just kind of like major third to your dominant 7th. But a lot of people play it, and the way I used to play it was like 3 hammer-ons in a row. So, and it sounds like that, but that's not correct. It's 2 hammer-ons with a slap and a pluck and a slap muted. And Les does that a lot. He implies that there's more going on, and it's more simple, but it grooves harder when you learn to play it with his technique, because he's so comfortable doing complex things, and just because of his technique, So yeah, it's a lot of that hammer-on, but that classic, that like little chromatic walk-up is almost like the most kind of, memorable part of the groove. At least it is to me,
It certainly stands out for me too. So I really like that because it does have that extra little oomph to it, I suppose. And it's a great contrast to all the thumping and plucking and all those muted notes. Then he's just walking up, and moving along. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like a jazz thing to do too. That works with these. I mean, Les likes to play with these dominant chords. It's just weird how all over the place it is tonally, and then to go back into the intro, that F sharp for the guitar solo, to go back that, with, and Brain just hammering on that 8th note, that straight 8th note kick groove, that it's just very pounding and persistent. And yeah, this song just has like a really cool urgency and moves forward really nicely.
Okay. I'm curious because you talked about these different parts starting on an F sharp to what was it, to an A and to a B and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. A is the verse and B7 is the main.
Yeah. Move. So is this a musical structure that's fairly unusual? I mean, you said it was weird, but is this something you would not imagine yourself ever coming up with, or how weird are we talking?
Yeah, no, it makes no sense. But but like if you were to study classical music, and I've joked about this, like at Berkeley, like when you learn classical music, there's all these rules, right? And it's cool, it's interesting. I mean, that's a part of that style of music, and it's very complex. And there's like the biggest rule when you're writing classical music, you're analyzing it, is no parallel fifths or no parallel fourths. Primus and a lot of 90s music is all parallel fifths and all parallel fourths. Meaning just like, takes John the Fisherman. That like chromatic, those are parallel fourths. Classical music, like, no, you can't do that. Huh. So a lot of Primus is like literally the antithesis to what classical songwriting is. But that's just how it is. Like I was joking about it with Joey Cruz, who made my bass today, and just like talking about this song, and he's just like, yeah, it's just Primus. Who knows why Les wrote it like that? And I have no idea. I mean, Soya, does Les ever like, I know that he like is a groove and technique guy, and he's not always like harking on theory. But when you come up with a groove like Golden Boy, I mean, was there any like, hey, this sounds kind of cool, like if we go to the A here in the verse, or is it like how he makes those songwriting decisions? I don't get.
Les's creativity is a vortex void that no one's allowed in.
Fair enough.
Seriously, I mean,
yeah, no, that's what I expected the answer to be.
He didn't turn and go, "Hey, Soy, what do you think of this lick?" I mean, a couple times he asked how the jam was going and say, "What do you think?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, Bob's Party Time lick. All right, remember I talked about that.
Yeah,
that's cool."
Yeah.
But
right,
absolutely not, dude. That guy is so private about his everything, about his bass and his thumb and his fingers and his voice and the lyrics.
Yeah, it's how he works.
We're all pawns in the game of life. Mongo, is all of us. Yeah. He does his thing, man, and we all just are working around it, and enjoy the masterpieces that come out of it, or the talent and genius that it becomes, even if it's like tepid bullshit, we all love it, because we're fans,
Yeah, I think that's a great point, honestly, Soya. Like it's like we can just enjoy how unique and what a genius Les is. If you try and analyze it too much, you're just going to get frustrated. Because even before the podcast, I was like, okay, maybe there is something to this. Okay, he's on this F sharp and then he's going up to B. Okay, well, that is like a fourth up. Maybe is he doing a blues kind of thing? Like, no, because then he's moving the seventh chord down to an A, and that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, what am I even doing? Why am I even trying to analyze
Of course.
this?
And
it's what it is. It just is what it is.
You, as a knowledgeable bass player, ever got around him, your band Les Special is opening for Primus, and you would never have a moment where you could ask him that. Or you could, and he would just look at you and go,
no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't dare.
I'm just saying. He's like, dude, don't bother me with that. I do my thing.
I talked to Les about the young ones and like obscure British comedies. I'm not going to ask him any bass-related things.
I mean, seriously though, dude, like I met Neil Peart, and the last thing I ever came into my mind was, dude, with that one Phil and Tom Sawyer, how the fuck did you do that? It's like, that's not what comes into your mind, And if you asked him that, he'd go,
we're done here.
Conversation is over.
Yep.
It's like, hey, hi, how are you? Wow, your shoes are untied. Oh, gee whiz, It's like, I mean, seriously, Les is a really incredible genius in what he does, and you're explaining these things that are these songs that are not Tommy the Cats or Jerry Was a Race Car Drivers, but they're very intricate, and everything makes sense in his head when he's coming up with this stuff, but he's not asking anybody in the room,
right,
what do you think of my bass part as I'm writing it,
Yeah, and if you overthink it, then that can influence your songwriting, and maybe you make a decision that doesn't get you to the track that we all know and love, and especially with the Brown album, with that theme of just kind of winging it and experimenting in the studio and coming up with the beautiful brownness of it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dark record. The sounds, it's just listening to it again, it's so crazy how dark it is, but not in a bad way. I'm just saying it's really like muffled and dark.
Yeah. I think one way we can, even this riff, maybe, Luke, to unpack it, is to kind of look at his amalgam of influences, which is wholly unique, in a sense. Some article came up somewhere, 20 people who revolutionized the sound of the bass guitar, right? And it was your Paul McCartneys and your John Entwistles and so on. But this list I thought was really good because they had Stanley Clarke, Larry Graham, Thunder Thumb, Chris Squire, Geezer. And I'm just like, less. We know he's, influenced by all those guys. And of course people are going, Les isn't on the list. And I'm thinking, yeah, he is through all these other guys.
Right.
So when we think about, if we think about it that way, with that busy lick there that we have in Golden Boy, I mean, I think we can kind of pick it apart and really hear some of these influences in there to a degree.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You're always kind of the sum of your influences. And we talked about it a little bit on the Cover Palooza episode, with Adrian Belew, right? And how influential 80s Crimson was to Primus. And we had a fundraiser for the Music Cellar for our music school last weekend. And we really leaned heavy into the 80s Crimson. We did like Elephant Talk and Thala.
Sweet.
But we talked a little bit about like Jerry Was a Race Car Driver. You'd hear that song and you'd be like, who comes up with a bass line like that? And it's like, well, somebody who listened to Elephant Talk a lot. Yeah. Like, they're different, but there's an influence there.
Right. And it's no big secret that Les talks about that's an influence, that kind of stuff, and that's where a lot of his craziness came out of, was weird bands like that. But he wanted to be something unique, not consciously, but subconsciously. He knew he didn't want to be Stanley Clarke, playing like Stanley Clarke. Oh, I got that. Well, Larry Graham, I got that. Well, who else? Bootsy Collins, I got that. Now I'm going to be like making my own shit, I don't want to be, dude, you sound just like Larry Graham. It's like, he knew that, and that's what's cool about all these crazy, weird things that he opened up with out of the gate, with that first stuff,
And that's Les's like weird stew. I mean, he sounds like Stanley Clarke playing Metallica songs sometimes. You know what I mean? And like, that's Les. Like, and that's like you said. Yeah, I mean, there's, you know what I mean? Like, that you take all those different bases that you name. I mean, like Chris Squire, like Cliff Burton. He listens to these guys, but then there's like that influence becomes reciprocal. Where Geddy Lee has said that he was influenced after he toured with Les. So that's
a pretty cool inception.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, like
one inspires the other.
Also, what is really what came to my mind is a comment that Sean Lennon made at some point during an interview. He said that if you isolated everything and you just heard the bass, for example, would you be able to know if Sting is playing? Would you be able to know if any particular bass player is playing? Most of the times not, right. Because what those guys play works great for their music, but it's not really idiosyncratic at all. When Les plays, I mean, you can tell right away, yeah, that's Les Claypool.
That's the most amazing point of this whole moment of this conversation, Frankie, and thank you for pointing that out,
Yeah, it's a great
It's
point.
incredible to have been around Primus in the 80s when they were first coming up. There was nothing like it. Primus changed the scene in the Bay Area to a new shift of other stuff that was going to go on now. It holds true to right now. I mean, like what you're saying, Frankie, you can listen to any Primus song anywhere at any time and go, that's Les Claypool. That's got to be Primus.
Oh, yeah.
And, Josh and I talked about that when we were discussing Los Bastardos, how, when they played that song live, sometimes Les was not playing bass, he was on percussion, and it was actually Adam Gates who was playing bass. And it's really amazing that it's the exact same instrument. It's not like Adam Gates was actually playing a different bass. I mean, it's the same one that Les had been playing the whole night, but it sounds totally different because, those are not his fingers playing the instrument.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I remember that conversation. Yes. But I'll go out on a limb and say Les Claypool is the most recognizable by the way he's playing and what you hear when he's playing artist of anybody I've ever heard. I mean, Chris Squire, okay, Geddy Lee, they're great, but they're in these bands that play these songs, right? Man, I mean, the Tommy the Cat challenge I put out to all these bass players that come on this shit, it's like everyone goes, or you almost got it, or you kind of got it, but it's like, man, when Les plays that, it's
and the
one of a
sad
kind,
thing,
man.
The sad thing is that he's not as recognized as he should be for that, but
he will be.
But he's not as recognized either for his songwriting. I mean, his lyrics are extremely clever, and that is something that people also overlook. So I think as a whole, Les Claypool is a really, really overlooked and underrated artist.
But it really is true. Like, through this podcast, I gained an entire new appreciation for Les's lyrics and songwriting. Yeah. I mean, you guys went on like a 45-minute tangent on bare knuckle boxing on the last episode. And I was like, and it was really interesting though to me. And I was like, Les looked all this shit up in a library and then wrote the song about it. Like,
right?
wow.
Yeah.
I apologize for that, by the way.
He sits around a Rancho Relaxo in his underwear and tries to figure out what the next song's going to be, dude.
It works.
Whereas, you're a bricklayer and I'm doing drywall, it's like, we got shit to do. We don't have time to sit around and figure out fisticuff.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's the thing, he's got his way of doing things, and don't question it because it works. And
there's one more thing which I think is really important. I'm going to give you an example using Robert Fripp. I read an interview where they asked him to look back on some of his work, and when they mentioned Scary Monsters, he said, "I don't believe in false modesty. I've heard what I did on that record, and it's amazing." Les Claypool would never say something like that. In fact, every time somebody brings up stuff about his technique or, how amazing he is, he always downplays that kind of stuff. He's an extremely humble artist. Totally. It's really amazing.
But that's always been his MO about like the bass magazines and guitar player magazines used to come at him when the Seas of Cheese happened, and they got to the major label, the Interscopes, and they're on MTV and they're headlining festivals and shit, and bass nerds would come at him going, "Dude, you're so sloppy. What the heck, man?" It's like, you're like, it's not correct, and he would just tell them, "Fuck off, dude. I play how I play. I got my influences and this is how I do it, and if you don't like it, go get fucked."
We kind of talked a little bit about it, the four of us, on the Year of the Parrot episode, when we were talking about artistic creative license and that area that Claypool achieves, that like unbridled uniqueness and just embracing who you are, but also that modesty. And I remember reading an interview with him back, I think, when they were doing the Fromage tour, and he was, they were asking about Seas of Cheese, and he listened back, and he's like, "Yeah, I was surprised at how cocky a lot of that playing was." And you like some of the playing on that album is like psychotic. You know what I mean? Like, is it like the bass lines are like psychotic is how I would describe it. So it's like, yeah, there was a cockiness, but that was like Les just embraced who he was at that time. And, you know, he plays it a bit differently and he approaches it differently. But yeah, it's that, you know, you have to be yourself and be unafraid, but you have to have a bit of modesty. And if you think that you're just the best, you're not going to keep developing or growing. You know?
Sure.
Well, dude, you have to understand, if you're like coming in to the scene and you're in some band that's popular at any instrument, remember what we talked with Jay Lane about when I was saying, Jay, you didn't have drums. You used Les's drums and my drumsticks and my cymbals. And Jay was like, well, dude, I was trying to be like Jaco Pastorius. Uh-huh. He was a bum that just showed up, and whatever got there, he just played it and melted faces. Right. And that's what Jay did back then, you know, whereas Les was, you know, a little more together, where that's not his mindset was to be like that. He had the mindset of being like, I'm doing what I do. And I don't care that I didn't go to the Berkeley Square of Music. Ha! The Berkeley School of Music. I didn't go
hybrid right there.
You know, like he didn't like come out of it like as some well-taught, you know, college degree bass player. He's like, I know it. I got my shit. I figured it out. Everything's cool. Here's what I'm going to do with it. You know, how I figured it out. And all these people, of course, once you get into the limelight, they start poking at you, you know. You didn't play that one C sharp minus demonic 16th was wrong in that one song. And he's like, huh? Fuck off. It's like, I don't give a fuck. It sounded great, dude. People like it. Fuck you. You know?
Right.
He didn't kowtow to people criticizing his techniques and the way he developed or the way he structured, the way he played, you know? And that's what's so genius about him and unique about him, you know? I mean, Luke, I don't know how to describe any other bass player that did that. Larry Graham or Chris Squire or Jaco. It's like, did Jaco go to fucking bass school? I don't know.
He was like, you know, he's from Florida, and there was a crazy jazz scene down there. But no, I mean, he didn't go to college. He got picked up by Joe Zawinul in Weather Report when he was like a kid, you know?
Right.
He was
saying.
just born with like a God-given incredible talent. I mean, Jaco
Les
was a rare talent.
Les did not go to school. He didn't, like, Jay Lane went to Berkeley School of Music, studied drums, graduated, and didn't own a drum set when he got out. You know? I mean, he's got that in his file of how good he is, you know, where Les didn't have any of that. And Les is 10 times past all of that in the sense that he's punk as fuck and he's crafty as fuck and he's a genius as fuck to making that bass sound like what he does, you know?
The world's better for it. If Primus was like held down or put in a box by music theory and rules, it wouldn't be Primus. Yeah. And this song probably wouldn't groove as hard and be such a weird, unique, special song. If he was like, that's too many parallel seventh chords. You know what I mean?
I do want to point out that Liz can be pretty unpredictable because he might react that way to those kind of questions. But I actually know a guy named Zane who has done like 100 VIPs. And he asked Les.
He's the only person that's done more than you, Frankie.
Yeah, gee whiz.
No one will ever do more VIPs than Frankie.
He asked Les why he always played Blood and Rockets on a different note compared to the studio version. And Les was actually pretty taken aback by his question. He was really amazed that somebody noticed that. I don't really recall like what was his. I think it had something to do with his vocals, you know, like his vocal range. But he was pretty amazed that somebody noticed that. I think maybe he appreciates, you know, those kind of observations from time to time.
I would say,
but he does that too, Frankie. And I'm glad you brought that up. I just want to say one last thing about the bass groove. You know, when I was I've been playing along to the Brown album version. And for any other bass players trying to learn this, I'm going to try and do a playthrough of this, and release it in conjunction with the episode so bass players can check it out, or at least post a clip. But if you're trying to learn it, there's a great cover on YouTube by a bass player called Cover Solutions, and he does some really nice Primus covers. But I was listening to some of the versions they did with J-Ski. So like Red Rocks, I think 2011, Frankie, right?
2010,
That,
yeah.
2010, that crazy set where like they start off the song, Les is playing this like, he's playing his Alesis Micron synth and he's just kind of like noodling. And I was like, what is he doing? He's in such like a weird mood and he comes out, he's like messing with the crowd. He's like, okay, we're going to play one more. Sorry. And people are booing. He's like, sorry, that's it. And it was like their third or fourth song. He was in a very interesting, I think he was in a great mood. It's a great set with a wild set list, but they go into Golden Boy and he plays it pretty differently than he plays it on the Brown album. Like the groove and the notes and the rhythms are all the same, but he's not like I've been saying that he harks on this B7 dominant. You know, it's all these like these major thirds and this dominant licks. And then in 2010, 2011, he was just playing it like B minor pentatonic, like a different kind of way, almost like this, like, you know, kind of going up scale wise, more built around the B minor pentatonic than this weird back and forth. So they're very subtle differences, but it did make me think, you know, is that a conscious decision on his part? Had he not, maybe he just didn't play the song in 20 years and thought that's how it went? Or maybe he just preferred to kind of play it a little more straightforward pentatonic than that weird dominant seventh part because it's a tricky bass line to play. But, you know, yeah, so I think Les changes parts sometimes throughout the years, whether it's based on, like, he likes the sound better or the technique is easier. Who knows? You know, maybe it's, I think, probably just a comfortability thing. But, yeah, you can listen to some of these versions of the song from 97 versus 2010, and the bass line's different. So, yeah.
And, you know, it's really amazing to notice that kind of stuff. It's truly for the hardcore.
Yeah.
That's why we are here right now.
That's guys like us.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm bored.
Luke, let me ask you this. Luke, how long has lespecial been a band?
15 years. A little over 15 years since we were kids.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so take into consideration a song that you guys wrote on your first record.
Right.
Do you still play songs on that record?
No, because our first like EP was like terrible. Like we were a band. We were like 16. I don't want anybody. Okay. People could find some shit on YouTube. We're like kids. It's like before we could grow facial hair. I wish it just didn't exist.
Okay,
but
Rory still can't.
That's not what I'm not talking about. Facial
that's
hair,
true, Josh. Right.
I'm saying you don't play those songs.
Right, but they would evolve. Yeah.
Okay, so
to answer your question,
so say second record, do you play those songs?
Maybe one or two off, like
okay.
You know, some
and
of
do
our,
you play them exactly the same as you played them when you recorded them?
No. Yeah, they change. Maybe some, but for the most part, no. Everything has subtle changes to it.
Primus is no different than any other band, dude.
Right.
It's like you
No,
record stuff, and it's that time capsule that you've done at that moment. You know, you've captured a moment, and then within 20 years later, you break up, you get new drummer, get other drummer, get the old drummer back. All of a sudden, you're it's a metamorphosis of how you really wanted the song, maybe, or you just go, that song, play it verbatim. That's that song. People want to hear it. Jerry was a race car driver.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't jam vehicle on Jerry was a race car driver.
If you compare, you know, recordings from the early days, the, you know, middle of the road in the 90s, and then the present, you can notice, oh yeah, that song is definitely different nowadays. Tommy the Cat has had so many changes over the years.
Of course.
Yeah. Or you can probably tell, you know, for example, Tweakers, that song is so much better now than it used to be in the early days. It's just amazing to see what they're going to do in the middle every night. Right.
But that's all that's different about that song, Frankie.
Yeah,
Tweakers is the exact same song except for the jam breakdown.
Exactly. The jam is what makes it better. But there isn't any case where you could say, oh, that song is worse than it used to be in the beginning. I think that just doesn't happen with Primus.
So he committed blasphemy earlier when he said Primus is like any other band. How dare
you?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Did I say that? No, I meant to say Primus is in the realm as all other bands.
You made a salient point.
I've recorded many records. Luke, you have. Josh has recorded 16 solo records. I know about that.
That's true.
I've done that on YouTube. But you know what I mean? It's like you're never happy with the end products, right?
Right.
And so you go to the live situation and whatever, 20 years down the road, you're like, man, that song was great, but it's got to do this. And you change it into what you want, right?
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes bands get so pigeonholed into that has to be what people know. It was on the radio around the world. The Police can't play. You know, everything she does is magic, you know, without being exactly correct. You know, They have to play it like that.
Yeah.
They can't jam it out.
Right.
If they do, people are like, oh, why are they straying away from it? Oh, Jesus Christ.
With Golden Boy, nobody gives a shit.
And
But
so when
know-
they play Golden Boy live and, Les plays that one note that's like a minor fifth off in that one verse that he did as a joke and somebody noticed it. It's like, come on, man.
But what's funny is, because Frankie, you were saying they didn't jam on this. This is there's two versions on YouTube of like 2010 and 2011. There's the Red Rock Show with Jay, and then there's a mosh cam from I think Sydney.
Yeah, we're gonna listen to that actually.
Oh, okay. So I don't want to give anything away, but they kind of jam it at the beginning, like Les.
Oh
is
yeah,
just
there's
kinda,
a long intro.
Yeah, he's just kind of like hanging on that seventh.
Yeah, he's teasing.
He's just
the
teasing
audience.
it, and Lur's kind of like standing over there, like, "What do you want me to do, dude? Like, am I playing here? Am I hanging out?" Like, I won't give it away if we're gonna listen to it.
Okay,
I'm glad you have that.
To come back around to this track, and I think you said this already, Luke, you used a term I don't think I've used before. I can't remember if you just said dual lick or dual riff, because Larry and Les are essentially playing the same thing on the main riff, right?
Yeah, just a unison riff.
Unison riff,
same,
thank you.
Yeah, same thing.
They play the exact same thing.
Okay. And then for the verses where Les is hitting those sevenths, Larry's just going down a step and essentially playing the riff on a different.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah. I think then he must be just playing the riff in A.
Yeah, I think he just goes down a step.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great point, because Les is leaving all that space. And then he does that great fill. Just that really
that
quick-
one. Boom, ba-dum, yep.
Bum.
Yeah.
The greatest moment in Prime history.
So yeah, I would assume that Lur is just playing it in A, not just kind of down a whole step from the main riff. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's really what it sounds like. But it's kind of cool because it flips things on its head, because we, especially in the Primus songs that most everybody know, like that show up on the Zingers compilation, you don't normally get that kind of structure where Les is just playing these simple chords and Larry's doing kind of the heavy lifting during a verse. Larry almost never makes noise during a verse. So
they like switch. Like Lur's either doing the upbeats or just the downbeats, and like Les is doing it now.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool that we get that contrast of Larry skanking over the chords at the intro, and then he's doing the main riff, but then he's doing the lifting during the verse. And I'm curious too about that solo. And Soya, maybe you can speak to that. This one sounds like it was worked on, because Larry's got three distinct parts to the solo, and I love all three. This is one of my favorite solos.
Oh,
is
solo's
like
amazing.
It's like so cruising along with Cordy, weirdo, this, that, and all of a sudden he goes,
Yes.
I was like, oh,
Yes.
dude, yes.
Yes.
That,
Yeah.
but he only does it for like 4 bars of the 16 bars of the solo, right?
It's
like,
at the
he's
very
just-
end, yes. We get
He's
some
kind of
nice stuff.
sliding around and goofing around, and we knew and all of a sudden he goes,
It's like 3 solos.
It really is, yeah. It is 3 solos, because the A part is him just kind of being Larry, and it sounds great.
Right.
And then he does that chugging part,
Right.
and then he breaks out of that at
Possessed part.
he breaks out of that at the chord change, because Les goes back to the main riff underneath it, and Larry's
He
just ripping.
smokes it to the end, man.
Smokes it,
Like,
yes.
complete.
Oh, yeah.
The first section, I mean, okay, Luke, if it's 4 bars where he like unleashes the weirdo shit and starts just going,
Yeah. That whole intro riff is just like a 4-bar phrase.
Okay,
Yeah.
are you hip to Michael Schenker?
I don't believe so.
Good Lord. Okay,
Sorry.
so your
Robbie
homework
Schenker,
is to YouTube or find Michael Schenker, and the song is called Captain Nemo.
Okay. I'm writing it down.
Michael Schenker was in the Scorpions in the old days.
Okay.
His brother Rudolph Schenker is the guitar player. Like from the beginning, he's the original dude. He's still there.
No scorpions on this podcast.
Ah, yeah.
Primus podcast.
Oh,
Damn it. I want Luke. I want you guys to listen to this. Frankie, look this shit up, man.
Sure.
This song in particular caught my ear as Lur was doing this Michael Schenker solo in this instrumental song that
Oh, cool.
the Michael Schenker Group did. It's called Michael Schenker Group. The song's on Built to Destroy is the record. It's like maybe 1982 or 81. But Captain Nemo, he does this solo in that thing that is so fucking awesome. First section of Golden Boy solo, right?
okay.
And then he goes to the
first
super,
solo.
super high notes and does the squirrely possessed ending, metal ending, right?
Right.
Okay, so for me, a really interesting thing about the Brown album is how, because of the dynamics of the tracks, you can sort of imagine how they put them together. And, there are songs like Camelback Cinema or Rest in Bones where you can tell straight away that they built the songs on the drum beat. And with Golden Boy, would I be right in assuming that they built the song around the bass riff?
Specifically, I mean, it's got to be based around that bass riff.
Yeah, it sounds like, Les came up with it, then Lur did the double lick, and then Brain just adapted.
I will say that this
doing.
was one that was pre-rigged at Ultrasound before we got up there.
Okay.
There were some recording tapes of this one specifically.
Sure, yeah.
There's a couple of those moments, like I said in the last podcast. I can remember that jam moment before I moved everything up to Les's house. Once we got the drums built, we moved everything up there, Brandon was playing on a bunch of scrappy shit, and we got that Vista Light kit. Boom. Then his buddy Barney, oh God, Barney, he got us the North kit at the drum shop down in South Bay.
Oh,
And
Barney.
a lot of this stuff was like, it enveloped as it came along. Quick riffs. We had cassette tapes that we recorded. There were quick riffs that were developed at Ultrasound that weren't arranged or anything. It just really came out of nothing. And I think this was one of them. They might have jammed it a bit. We recorded it on the little cassette player with a couple mics. It was really ghetto, and I had to bring all the cassette tapes up to Les's and say, okay, let's try to figure this out. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, the Brown tapes, man.
I'd go out on a limb as a guess. I'd assume I'm probably incorrect here, but certain songs when they can be like in 3 different key signatures, sometimes they're the result of 3 different songs put together. For example, we were working with students to perform Paranoid Android by Radiohead, and that's a song that's famously 3 different songs that they put together. And it's an opus of songs. It's an incredible song, and there's cohesion to it, but they're clearly different songs. There's like the heavy, and then there's the breakdown, which is like really kind of like apocalyptic, depressing Radiohead. And they work together, but they're clearly different things. It seems to me like Golden Boy is probably born out of that main riff, that B riff, but maybe those other riffs, the intro riff and the verse, maybe Les had those kicking around too, and it's like, hey, these kind of would work with that. That's one reason I could maybe guess why there's 3 different key signatures in it. But to me, this song, even though there's different keys, it has a cohesive feel, and it's all Golden Boy. So I would say it probably was born out of that B7 riff, and then they added the other, but, what do I know?
Lyrics at long last.
As usual, Josh. I mean, they work perfectly on the song. They're Les Claypool kind of assuming this role of narrator that he usually does for the songs. But when you look at them on paper, they're really well written. They're really, if I had no idea about Primus, if I had never heard their music, and I just read those lyrics, I would assume that, the person writing these songs is somebody that has a really great handle of the English language.
Yeah.
It just flows so well, and they are full of so many, interesting words that you don't hear very often in other songs. Again, props to his songwriting, which I think is really fantastic.
I want to go off on that tangent with the vocabulary words that he uses, because he's, I think, intentionally using, and of course we don't know because the lyric writing is private, the vocal recording is private, but when I look at these lyrics, these words just scream 1897 to me. Okay. Yeah. He stood before the Union and made a solemn oath, right?
I'm still like caught up in fisticuffs myself.
Yeah.
As we go and pour into this song out of fisticuffs. That's weird that you said that. I have to say that. I agree.
Yeah. He could have said this 1,000 different ways, but he says, his arms were made of nickel and his forehead made of wood. Like, that just sounds like a 19th century phrase.
Some George Washington shit.
And how many people say in a pop song, and this is structured like a pop song, how many people have used the word affidavit? That's another one of those 25-cent words when a 5-cent word would do. He's doing this in such a way that it just sounds old-timey.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that word meant until this song.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Like,
but
what
in 97, when you heard it, you were 6.
Yeah, but even I still kind of don't really know. What does it mean? Like a form, like a pass or a slip or something? Like,
It's usually a
What is
written
it?
statement.
I mean, yeah, I have Les to thank for helping in my vocabulary when you like analyzing his lyrics as a kid, honestly.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
It's a pretty straightforward tale about another tragic, unfortunate character.
Yeah.
As Les Claypool is used to writing about. It's just like this guy that winds up in jail, but we could sort of say that it's for the right reasons in his mind, because he shot somebody who was stealing, and he never felt any remorse about it, because in his mind, shooting a thief is the right thing to do. As he's released from prison, he states, I would do it again. So
Shoot that fucker again. Yes, I would.
Exactly. That kind of leaves the door open for, this character maybe going back to prison at some point. And now that Luke actually pointed that out, I think it's also one of the rare instances where Les is using the F word.
The taboo F-bomb.
I can't believe he did
Song's not going to be a single if there's an F-bomb.
The song does have an explicit next to it on iTunes and Spotify.
That's right. There you go. That's it.
Tipper
Yeah,
Gore had
so
something to do with that.
but there is a bit of a contrast there too, because this is the character, the Golden Boy, saying that, hell no, thief's a thief, and not shoot that fucker again. Everything else is narration with his lawyer in the courtroom made a noble plea, which is not something the Golden Boy would say, right? Affidavit from the principal, made a solemn oath, all these great lines and all these great phrases contrasted with, and he doesn't do it on the record, but that dude doesn't have a lot of teeth left at this point, right?
Yeah.
So, I do that again. Something like that. So obviously some irony going on, because in the first line in the title is Golden Boy, and in our modern lexicon, a Golden Boy is somebody who's held aloft, I suppose, as a paragon of excellence or some kind of virtue, or is being or is held in high regard or high esteem or high worth, given the descriptor golden. So when he's seen as a Golden Boy, we're thinking, oh, this guy can do no wrong, whereas he does pretty much everything wrong. So when I hear that line, his arms are made of nickel and his forehead made of wood. Nickel's a pretty hard metal, so this dude's a big, strong guy, but he's a blockhead. There's not much going on up here. So
not a meathead, a blockhead.
Yeah, he's not a meathead because his forehead isn't made of porterhouse steak. There's all this going on, he's working nights at the liquor store and he drinks to pad his pay. So he's stealing. This is where the irony comes in. He's not a Golden Boy. He's stealing from his employer, but somebody else is lifting 40s, he shoots him. Okay, so there's the hypocritical part of the Golden Boy there, too.
A great contrast between the voice that Les gives to this character through the only phrase they have in the song, compared with the rest of the narration. He certainly paints a negative picture of this character through that phrase.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way he isn't. We know which side he falls on as far as the morality of this tale. Interestingly, a little more ambiguous than normal, but we definitely get it. And there's even an indictment of the justice system where he's out in 3 months of an 18-month sentence. He doesn't last he doesn't have to spend too much time in jail. So, and clearly his actions are not going to change. His attitude hasn't changed. So that's, and that's it. Like that's the economy version of these lyrics. But once again, there's more grit and brownness, to all of this. I still think this could have been a single just with that simple, his mom asked why. It's a nice little spoken chorus, in the middle of this really funky, cool riff. And people probably, I really think listeners would have hooked into it, but it wasn't my call.
But you know what? It's interesting because you said that at the beginning of the podcast, and I think that this is like a fan favorite off the album, safe to say, or at least one of the more like recognizable tunes on it. It's interesting what you guys were, you got into this in Fisticuffs, and it was a great point about the grittiness and these dark, tragic characters, which we know Les likes his dark characters. Mm-hmm. But Tom Waits has said that the Brown album is his favorite Primus album.
Yeah, he said that it sounds like it needs a good wash.
Exactly. So, I always loved that quote. I'm a huge Tom Waits fan, and I always felt like it was Tom Waits' favorite album because of that sound quality, because of that grittiness and that junkyard, big open, crazy shit. But the more you think about it, it might be more the lyrical quality. I mean, it's almost like these dark, unsavory characters and these questionable, weird, and that kind of 19th century steampunk vibe. I feel like all that is why it's Tom Waits' favorite album more than just that gritty sound to it.
Yeah, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Waits got a lot from Bukowski, and these lyrics very in the ballpark of Bukowski as well. I think that's the thread that holds them together. And
he obviously is a Brain fan because he hired Brain for his band.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, he was recommended by Les, I do believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of
Josh,
the
what is the 1897 connection here?
I just have this silly theory that this album was actually recorded in 1897 but not released until 1997.
And that explains the sound quality.
It explains the sound quality. It explains the lyrical content.
The lyrical
it
themes.
Explains everything that happens. So for this one, I guess I have an infamous murder from 1897. It wouldn't explain these lyrics, but it was interesting when I found it. In 1897, there was a man named Adolf Lutgert, who was a German-American business guy who lived in Chicago. And turns out he murdered his second wife. And it was infamous because he dissolved her body in a sausage vat filled with lye at his sausage company in Chicago.
Okay.
Wow.
So he was convicted.
Had a copy of Ashes to Ashes under his arm when they discovered his body.
Well, you know what's interesting is people did call him the Sausage King of Chicago.
Okay.
Oh, that was Let's Dance was under his arm. It wasn't Ashes to Ashes.
So it just makes me think of Ferris. I always think of Abe Froman, right? So
that sounds like a nickname that Claypool would have liked for himself.
Oh, like no doubt. The Sausage King. And then he would have pulled his pants down and showed everybody, right?
Right.
But Lutgert, he was convicted of it, was sentenced to life in prison, but he died within like a year and a half of his sentence starting. So he didn't last long in the clink. But there were also, interestingly, there were rumors going around afterward that he had ground up his wife and put her into the sausages that he sold. So sausage sales plummeted soon after his trial. Of course, they have since recovered, as you well know. We're all big sausage fans here.
Like, that could have just been its own Claypool story lyric. Like, he could have made a whole song about a guy killing his wife and making sausages out of her. That sounds right in his wheelhouse.
Oh, yeah. I'll send him this link since I have his number. And
look, you said that's a nickname that Les would have dug. He actually did. Yeah, there's this story that he tells before Filipino Ray on the Fancy DVD, where he says that, he was walking down the street and he saw an advertisement for the Sausage King. So he ate one of those hot dogs and he actually got sick.
And now he's got the Whamola, the Whamola wiener. So Les is taking the hot dog industry into his own hands.
He said, I can do better than this, dude.
Plenty of hot dogs with Claypool over the years, for sure. We're all about getting that whole hot dog. Come on now.
All right, let's take a look at our cover of the week. This is a cover of Golden Boy. It is by a band called, it's capitalized M-U-U. I'm just going to say Mew because, M-U is the word Mew. And this is live from Idiosyncratic, and this is by M-U-U or Mew, and it looks like they're out of Bolivia. And please, Luke, if you can help me out, I think the bass player's cheating on the bass lick, so please help me with that.
Esta es una canción de Primus y es para todos los niños bonitos de la sala.
I forgot about that part. He didn't just cheat it. He didn't even play it on that second.
He just stopped playing it. So yeah, I would consider that cheating on that song for sure.
It was pretty legit.
It started, he had that intro down. It was interesting. Those guitar parts weren't as like short and staccato as Lur's.
Right.
But that was kind of cool.
The bass was in there.
It was in there, and it sounded good, and they were locked in. It was a little bit, different than the main riff, but again, it is a riff that, a slight variation gives it a different sound. But yeah, then he cut out. So yeah, that's cheating, man. If you're trying to play a Primus song, you don't get to take any time off. I tried to do that in pudding time because my hand was cramping up by, doing the... for 6 minutes. And so I tried everything. I tried like looping it. I tried to just cut out, and I was like, I can't. I have to just play it, and I'll deal with the tendonitis when I'm older.
Right.
But yeah, he cheated.
Through the rest of the song, he does play that riff. So I don't know what happened there. If he just dropped, or he messed up, so he just said, "Forget it. I'll come back in at the verse." But it did sound all right.
Really decent, actually.
Yeah, it's brave to cover Primus, especially some of these deeper cuts. And Golden Boy, I think, qualifies. Almost anything on the Brown album qualifies. So.
So we got 2 Brain performances, 1 Jay Lane performance, and 1 Herf performance, so you guys can check out, the approach each drummer had to the song. First up, we have a very rare performance. You're not going to find this on Toaster.
Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Calderon.
Hey, remember, 2 of tonight's lucky callers will win a wonderful Modern Rock Live t-shirt thanks to our good friends at AT&T.
The fuck? What is going on? Why is this it? What?
Yeah.
What the fuck was that?
Just going to do it again.
Oh my God, who are you? I hate your voice.
We should be hearing Golden Boy on Modern Rock Live.
That was really cool though. That sounded like that had that Brown album twang. That was Les playing the bass line off the Brown album. That's the Golden Boy we know and love.
We didn't talk about it when we were talking about the music, but that nice little fill on the hi-hat to the really small cymbal that Brain does. Ding! Man, and cool. He nails it there in the live performance. Yeah. It's one of my favorite little drum fills of all time. It's just so small, but it's great. I love that.
Is that a Zilbel, Soya, that he's hitting there?
Brain did not use a Zilbel. We had 3 splash cymbals above the hi-hat.
Cool.
Like
so it's one of those little splashes.
Like this. 3 of them. And you go...
Next up, Josh, is Riverport 1997. It's a pretty thick performance.
Would that be THICC?
Yeah.
He's bringing the thickness right now.
Yeah.
Click and play right now.
Yeah, this performance is thick.
Nice.
Woo. Who's on drums?
Great.
That's what kills me about these recordings is they sound so crystal clear, and of course, we know how they were recorded for the Brown album.
That sounds great. That's so cool.
It sounds better than the record.
That was
it
thick,
just sounds
right?
so good.
That was thick.
That sounded great, man.
Yeah,
where was that at,
thick.
Frankie?
Riverport.
I was there.
Yeah, that was burning too.
They were plowing, man. Nice one. Yeah. They had a lot of energy with Brain. That's so great. Sounds so good.
Yeah, I mean,
that
Brain
insistent
was a
kick drum. That tum, 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 tum,
man.
Like,
Brain
it works
at
a fast tempo. Yeah, he's the conductor.
Always.
Now we got some Jay Lane. This is actually the performance that Luke pointed to at before. This is Sydney 2011 Mosh Camp.
I see why this is a Jay Lane tune, man. Listen to that
Jay
closed
Lane
hi-hat.
Kick drum is completely different. Jay Lane's kick drum foot is connected to Les's thumb.
That's what's cool
bass.
about that. I love how different it is.
And I can hear it. He goes, and when Les goes,
and you hear how the bass line has a slightly different sound on that. It's the groove is there, but the notes are the shape of the riff is slightly different on that recording.
And the pachyderm, you can also tell right away that it's completely different.
A lot of mid-range on that pachyderm prototype. That's right when he first started using that too. Well, I was just talking to Joe about it because Carl and he made a replica for Les around that time. He wanted an exact replica of the original 32-inch walnut bass. And I guess he just didn't like it because then that's right around the time he started using that pachyderm prototype.
I'm not authorized to comment.
Thought I could weasel something out of you there, Soya.
The last one is Port Chester 2017, so you guys can check out Herf.
I was there.
Awesome. Oh, very good.
Wrong note there.
I think Larry had a rough go there. But what's
We're trying to find that note for a little bit there.
what was was Herb doing something different there on the drums too?
He wasn't doing as much complex hi-hat work as Jay or Brain, right?
Right.
Yeah, seemed like he was keeping it a little open too.
Hey, Frankie, was that on the Desaturating 7 tour?
Yeah, that was the first webcast they did for that tour.
Right. Yeah, I was there with Rory. Yeah, that was an awesome show and a very cool bust out. Yeah.
Nice.
The cap is great, and Les loves the cap. One of the last shows I got to see before quarantine was the Claypool and Delirium opening for the Flaming Lips at the Capitol Theater. Oh, yeah. It was an amazing show.
I mean, what I love about the Capitol Theater is that anytime Les plays there, they record it professionally. So,
right.
Yeah, bring it on.
Totally. They do the relic streams, and it's such a gorgeous venue.
Yeah.
My favorite was the second one you played from 1997.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the thick one.
Yep,
that was the
thick,
thickness.
man. I'll take that thickness all day. Yes, for those of you listening, we've paused the podcast 3 times just to talk about other stuff. I've edited out about good 40 minutes of what was recorded, and you're getting, by the way, this is the best. You're getting the best of it. So, Golden Boy, you might want to turn to alchemy because you've been tracked. Luke Bemand, thank you so much for joining us for Golden Boy.
Thank you guys so much, man. Such a pleasure, as always, getting deep with it. Soya, all the inside info is so awesome.
Man.
And you guys just make every song on every episode my favorite Primus song, at least for that day.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Luke.
Luke.
Thanks, man. We're at Primus Tracks on Instagram and Twitter. Luke is at Luke Bemand Bass. You can find his band lespecial at lespecial music. Frankie's at Frankie Barrestein. Tim Soya does not want to be found, so please leave him be. Frankie, get in your little metal capsule, because next week, you know where we're going.
Josh, I will stand by and wait to be called.
You're getting too good at these. Later days.
Soya asked why.